In today's episode, Silent Skies, the New Age of Drone Threats in America, I'm joined by Tom Adams, whose extraordinary journey takes us from a cattle ranch in Montana through military service and biomechanics to the heart of the FBI and beyond. We'll explore how drone technology is changing our skies, the challenges of counter UAS operations, and what it takes to protect public safety and critical infrastructure in this new era. Stay tuned. This is one conversation you don't want to miss. I'm your host, Jay Hinsey, and this is Under the Crab. All right, Tom, good afternoon. It's good to see you, brother.
Jay, it's good to see you too. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I think the last time I saw you was at a SABT in service in DC.
That's probably pretty accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a couple years, and then I went off to HDS for a couple years.
Yeah. And then I left the Bureau. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad you can get on and talk about your career today. But as always, before we start, I try to give our audience a little background into who you are. So just to go over that, Tom Adams, he's a retired FBI special agent after 20 years of service. He retired in 2022. He spent most of his career as a special agent bomb technician supporting the counterterrorism efforts in the United States and around the world. The last 3 years of his career, he was a supervisory special agent in the FBI's Counter-UAS program. In that role, he helped shape the team's policies, procedures, and training. He has planned and conducted numerous Homeland Security counter-UAS missions in complex urban environments and high-profile venues around the United States, including Super Bowls, World Series, and Rose Bowls. And those are a treat to work, aren't they?
yes, they are.
Since leaving the FBI, he built a counter UAS resource website and served as the co-chair of the Operating Requirements Working Group for the FAA UAS Detection and Mitigation Aviation Rulemaking Committee. Boy, don't spend a lot of time saying that very fast.
Yeah, a lot of words.
Which published its final report in January 2024. Tom is now the Director of Public Safety for DroneShield, a provider of multi-mission counter UAS solutions for the military, public safety, and critical infrastructure. He has a master's degree in unmanned systems from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University and a bachelor's degree in biomechanics from Montana State University. And I understand you are also active duty in the Army.
Correct. Yes.
So you've been all over, brother.
I've really been fortunate to have had a really fun career. I need to shorten that bio though, but I've had a really fun career. I've been really fortunate to have been in a position to really be involved in such a wide range of activities and backgrounds. When I take a look back at what I've did, I'm surprised at really the variety of things that I've done, but it's been great to get me to this point.
Yeah, and I always tell everybody on the show, the audience, that's one great thing about the FBI is you have opportunities aplenty. Like there's so many things you can get involved in. Having gone to Embry-Riddle, was that the campus in Arizona or was that another campus?
So it was the worldwide campus. So it was based
Okay.
out of Daytona. It wasn't the campus in Prescott, but it was the online master's program that I did.
One of my ASACs from Phoenix is a professor there.
Wow.
So it's funny how, people like us go on to do all sorts of different things. So tell us a little bit about how you grew up, your childhood, where that was and what that looked like.
Yeah, so I'm actually a fifth generation Montanan. My family arrived in Montana in the 1860s, so we were there before it was even a state. But I grew up in the Bozeman, Helena area. But I did spend a bit of my time growing up. I lived on a cattle ranch in eastern Montana, and that was an interesting time to grow up. At that time frame of my age 6 to 11. But we were so far out in the rural area and keep in mind, this was in the 70s and early 80s, but we didn't have a telephone. We had three TV stations.
Oh, yeah.
I spent most of my time outside. It was an interesting way to grow up on a working cattle ranch.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah. And then ended up staying in Montana too, to go to college and stuff at Montana State University there in Bozeman.
Okay. Did you think you were going to end up working a ranch and staying there and doing that kind of world?
Yeah, it's amazing how your trajectories in life can change based on a lot of different events. I think that the reason I ended up moving to out to eastern Montana is my parents divorced when I was fairly young, and my mother ended up remarrying a person named John Walborn, he was a state legislator, and he was in Helena where I lived, and he and my mom ended up getting married, so that's how I ended up moving out to that cattle ranch. And I think if my mother ended up dying, passing away from cancer when I was fairly young. And so I think if that event hadn't happened, I probably would have stayed out there in a ranching type, environment. It wouldn't have been on that ranch probably because that would have been run by my stepfather's son. But I probably would have ended up in some sort of an agricultural related profession for sure, I think.
Yeah, yeah. What got you into biomechanics? How'd that kinda like, how did that happen?
Yeah, senior year in high school, trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. You're looking at what do some of these different professions make, and so I was initially looking at being a mechanical engineer. That's what my some of my classmates were doing that were going from my high school in Helena to Bozeman at Montana State, and like, okay, wow, these guys make pretty good money. Maybe that's what I'll do. But they weeded me out really quickly that first quarter with some of the calculus classes that I'd never had before, which that was the purpose of those classes. And I realized that this was not something that I was really interested in putting in the work to do. And so I had to kind of go down the route of where I thought I could where I'd have an interest. And so with biomechanics is essentially the analysis of human motion. I thought I might be a physical therapist or maybe designing shoes for Nike. That was kind of my initial thought, but here I am on a much different path,
Oh,
many,
wow,
many
yeah,
years later.
yeah. Did, any of that college experience help you in any way?
No, I've
Yeah,
never used my major ever.
me neither.
Yeah, so I was an Army ROTC person in college. I was on a partial scholarship with Army ROTC, and
Yeah,
so after college, I ended up going active duty, and then after active duty, going into civilian sector for a while before I joined the bureau. And I've never used my degree other than it's a prerequisite to apply for a lot of different jobs.
yeah,
But I did make sure when I did complete my master's degree I wanted to do it in something that I felt that I could actually use for once, and that's what I did. And we can chat more about that too later if you want.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was the same way. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but my dad was adamant, "Hey, just go get your degree, you never know. Even if you don't ever use it, having that paper, says a lot about what at least you can accomplish things." And it ended up being the main thing to get me in the bureau, so
Yeah. No, and in college isn't necessarily whether someone decides to go to a college doesn't, certainly impact whether or not they are not going to be successful. The trade schools or going some other routes are great ways to go too, as you know also. But it just ended up being the right route for me. So I was fortunate that I had the opportunity to do that.
do you miss any of the ranch stuff, or do you remember a lot of it, or is it kinda so
Yeah, I
long
mean,
ago?
it was really interesting because we had about I think around 500 head of cattle. We had a lot of pigs and of course horses, and we had all the wheat and alfalfa fields and things like that. But I think some of the distinct memories are our my bus stop was 10 miles down a dirt road on the highway. So sometimes in those Montana winters, we had to
Oh,
drive in a tractor, snowmobile, whatever to get to the bus stop. But I think that one of the memories that really sticks is that feeling when you're 8, 9, 10 years old, you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to round up cattle for branding, and then spending a good day's work branding all for a large number of calves and doing some of those things like that. It was really unique to be able to live in that rural environment and have that experience because I think it really shaped me to maybe go down some certain paths or to have some of those experiences I think were really valuable.
yeah, absolutely. Did you do anything really dumb while you were working on the ranch?
I'm sometimes surprised I'm still alive.
Any chicken fights with a tractor?
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, so we had snowmobiles, we had horses, and we had all that kind of stuff. And so my mother used to just let me kind of run loose on the ranch, and I
Yeah,
had working cattle dogs that followed me all around the ranch. And so I would go climb on rock formations that I think if my kids climbed on today, I would
I
probably have
know.
a heart attack.
Yeah, right.
It's amazing that I didn't fall off a cliff or get bit by a rattlesnake or whatever the case may be. But yeah, there was always some dumb stuff going on.
Yeah. Or gored by a bull.
Yeah, that's almost happened too. I used to, try to jump on the cows or things, dumb things like that that a young kid would do. But yeah, I've been bucked off a few horses, bucked off a few cows and pigs and stuff like that.
Did you do branding as well?
I didn't brand. My job during these brandings, as I was still pretty young, was to spray disinfectant on calves that have been dehorned or castrated, or harvesting those Rocky Mountain oysters that are famous
Yeah.
in Montana.
I was in northern Arizona on on someone's ranch that I know, and they were doing that, and that's the first time I've ever seen that before. That was quite the experience.
Yeah.
Not sure I would enjoy participating. I guess I'd get used to it, but I guess the other question I have for you: did you ever participate in cow tipping?
I did not, but I did find out kind of one of the dumb things that I did is we had a hired hand that worked and helped out on the ranch, and he was always playing tricks on me or throwing me in the water tanks and things like that. So one night I was out in the corral and there was a nice steamy deposit from a cow laying there, and I dug underneath it so that I wasn't touching it. And he always used to watch TV in his little trailer, and I opened up the door and threw that right at him, hit him right on the chest, and ran away. I thought that was pretty funny, but my mom did not, and I counted. That was the worst I ever got in trouble.
Really? You paid
Man,
for
I,
that one,
I
huh?
got crushed, but I did get him back, and he never threw me in a tank again. So
He deserved it.
mission accomplished. Yeah, so that's kind of some of the dumb things that Montana kids do. But
That sounds like a way simpler, better life than what kids are dealing with nowadays.
yeah, and I don't know what the future holds for me, but I would like to live out of town sometime and have 5 or 10 acres just to raise some chickens and still be near a city, but to have that solitude that I think would be nice to have.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way about living in Alabama. I love it here, and it's having some acreage would be nice. During that time, did law enforcement or join the military ever cross your mind at all?
So law enforcement, no. Military, yes. I come from a pretty strong military background. My father was active duty U.S. Army for a while, and then he was full time Army National Guard and was one of the main National Guard leaders in Montana. My brothers joined the National Guard. I joined the National Guard in high school, so the military piece was something that was kind of ingrained in the family tree, so to speak. But law enforcement, absolutely not. I think I'm the only person in my family I know that's ever gone down the law enforcement route, and it's not something I even considered until much later on in my career.
Was that effect of being in the military? Did that come about while you were serving?
Yeah, no, it didn't. It actually came post-military when I was in the civilian sector. I left the Army after 5 years. I did my 5 year commitment and wanted to kind of test things out in the civilian sector. And I got in the civilian sector. I was working in the credit card industry in both Austin, Texas, and then here in Richmond, Virginia. I was working for Capital One. Great companies, but the work wasn't as fulfilling for me as the Army was. And so I started looking at other options. And one of our former colleagues, but someone who's been a good friend of mine that I went to college with, Casey Salway, he left the Army and went straight into the Bureau. And he's, talking about how great it is. And I wasn't really digging the corporate life too much. And so I ended up starting to look at whether a law enforcement career might be for me. And that's kind of where I started getting interested, was after he joined the Bureau right out of the Army.
Yeah. I've found that a lot of like my son, myself, even getting out, you realize you miss the camaraderie, you miss the regimented, I guess, lifestyle. And so I think for me, getting into law enforcement and eventually the bureau kind of it met that I guess desire, especially to be with teams, be with a bunch of guys that thought the same way and were a part of a big mission. Tell us about how, after getting out of the army, how did the whole bureau thing happen for you?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the corporate world I wasn't really sitting in a cubicle and having meetings about meetings was about all that I could handle. And I felt like I wanted to go back into government service. So, I found myself watching a lot of the crime scene shows on like the Discovery Channel and things like that. And the interest was definitely there. And then having someone that I knew and respected and had, you know, gone to college with and been in the army with, going and talking about the career being so fulfilling. That's when I really started taking a close look at it. And at the time, the bureau wasn't really hiring. This was in early 2001 timeframe, and that there wasn't much going on. And so, but the recommendation made to me was, hey, go ahead and fill out an application anyway, send it into the, the local field office applicant coordinator, and just see what happens. You never know. And so that's what I did. I hired. This was back when you had to type the forms. I hired somebody to type up my application, and I submitted it in July of 2001, just like thinking, hey, maybe the world has changed a little bit, and there'll be an opportunity for me to join the bureau. And I didn't get anything back from them until October of 2001. After 9/11, they started
Wow.
opening up that door. So it was
Yeah.
very good advice that I listened to and actually followed up on, and put that application in, and it provided me the opportunity to be part of some of the early classes right after my.
Yeah. No, I was still state and local, and I went the same route. I put in for every agency, state and local, finally got on one. And then I wanted after 9/11 happened, I was a bomb tech already. I'd already gone through and, I always made fun of the SABTs in our bomb class, and I ended up being one. But, I graduated HDS in July 27th, 2001, so right before craziness started, and it was an interesting time in the bureau. 9/11 happened, and then just the world changed, and so the bomb community changed, there was a lot of money, there was a lot of things that obviously were happening in the country, and then I ended up leaving state and local business and joined the bureau and went to Kentucky. So
Yeah.
my life changed a lot.
Did you
So,
make fun of yourself when you became an SABT?
I tried to make sure I wasn't a hypocrite and,
Yeah.
never did I thought I would get hired. I grew up blue collar, lower middle class family. I'm lucky to get a degree and it just kinda all worked out well for me.
Yeah, that's great.
So once you got in, where did you end up going? What did you end up start working on?
Yeah, so, doing my ranking of the 56 field offices, I was hoping to go back to the Northwest, kind of where I'm from. I was trying to get to Seattle, Portland, Denver, Salt Lake, and I ended up in Miami, a place that I'd never been to. It was my 14th choice. And then, I had to wait. I didn't know what squad I was going to go to in Miami until I got there. And then the week that I arrived, I was assigned to one of Miami's two healthcare fraud squads. And I'm like, holy cow. I'm guessing this was because I was a medical service corps officer. They just kind of connected those two things and said, put him on the healthcare
Do
fraud
it.
squad.
Yeah.
And you know, the help, being on the public corruption side, I was kind of hoping for counterterrorism type of stuff, but I ended up on the white collar crime side of things. And I remember when I was, got into Miami, and starting to train around some of the agents that had been there for a while. There was some people with medical backgrounds before the bureau. There were nurses and things like that, and they were showing me they're looking through medical records and saying, "Well, that's wrong, that's fraud," all this other stuff. And I'm looking at this stuff, going, "Holy cow! Like, how in the heck do you know when you look at a medical record that that's not what it is?" And all this other stuff, because of the healthcare fraud schemes down in Miami-Dade County. Some of them were fairly complex, and it took a lot of time to and huge case files looking through medical records and bank records and interviews and all these other things. And I got to the point, I actually really enjoyed working the healthcare fraud stuff. I got to the point where I could open up a medical record for the cases I was working in. I could pick out BS in a heartbeat of what was legitimate, what wasn't. And those gave me a lot of investigative leads that ended up being really helpful in a lot of the cases. So that was my first role in the bureau, was going to a healthcare fraud squad in Miami. But it was actually there where I started taking a closer look at some of the operational roles and opportunities that the FBI officer offers. And I volunteered to be, mop the floor for the evidence response team, because they had a pretty large team in Miami. They were covering down on Central and South America for extraterritorial responsibilities. And so I started just, like I said, mopping the floors, doing the dirty work until a position came open that I applied and got on
So
Miami's
s
evidence response team.
So with that, tell the audience what you just said. They're responsible for other places outside the continental U.S. What does that look like getting on a team like that? What does that allow you to do?
Yeah, so some field offices have extraterritorial responsibility to respond to or to maybe investigate, crimes, federal crimes, or things that happen with to American citizens overseas, and in addition to the legal attaches. That's probably a really bad description that someone's going to type on
Pick apart.
LinkedIn, like you didn't describe it correctly. But please put in the comments below
Yes.
what it does. But what it did is when there were, like, for example, if there was a death of an American in Jamaica or Colombia or Honduras, and there's a nefarious nexus or potentially a federal crime or something like that, we would deploy and gather that evidence, and it would be part of the FBI investigation files, and it's part of the investigation. So we're kind of like a mobile international capable crime scene team.
Yeah. That's pretty good. A lot of people don't know we have what are called legats or legal attaches, and they're assigned all over the world. And it just kind of allows us to work with other countries' law enforcement arm, which opens up the door for ERT evidence response teams and all sorts of types of investigations when U.S. citizens are injured or killed. I had the
Absolutely.
same thing. I went to Iraq. We were the same. We were utilized the same way for investigations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's amazing when you talk to people, they don't realize what a strong international presence the FBI has
Yeah,
around the world, and the role that they play in not only helping US investigations, but also the reverse when there are things that happen in the US, those legal attaches provide information going back
right.
into that country too.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So from there, you got onto ERT, and how did the whole bomb thing come about for you?
Yeah, that didn't come about for a while. So I ended up, I was in Miami about 4 or 5 years, and there came a point in my personal life. I was married, already had a daughter and a stepson, and childcare in Miami was expensive. It was really expensive to buy a bigger house. So the opportunity came to go to the San Antonio field office, a Callan resident agency on the border,
Boy,
and kind of took a look at that from a professional development and a family growth standpoint. And we realized that we could maybe have a little bit more room in a house, and maybe have an opportunity where we could afford to have another child. And that's what I did. I volunteered, went to the San Antonio office, McAllen Resident Agency on the border, and was down there for another 4 or 5 years and worked public corruption cases there on the border, which was great work. That the work that was being done out of the McAllen Resident Agency was just absolutely incredible. That the resident agency, or RA, was bigger than some of the smaller field offices, and the work that the drug squads and the counterterrorism squads and the public corruption squads were doing was really quite amazing. But when I got there, I wasn't in an operational role like ERT like I was in Miami, but one of my squad mates, Steve Hauk, with the CK,
yeah,
not the G, but Steve
yeah,
Hauk, he was the bomb tech down there in the Rio Grande Valley, but he eventually got his transfer to Austin, Texas, and so that
okay,
left
yeah,
in the bomb tech position in McAllen. And then again, talking to my good friend Casey Salway, he became a bomb tech out of Houston, and so he told me it was the best job in the bureau,
he's
and
right.
he wasn't lying, that's for sure. But I ended up applying for and got the position, and was really fortunate to start my career as a bomb tech down there in McAllen.
Yeah, that's great. When did you go through school?
I went to HDS in 2008.
2008. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and yeah, so it was great. What was interesting about that is, coming into HDS, I didn't have the time period that maybe a lot of people have to do some OJT prior to going to HDS. And so when I came to HDS, I was a blank slate. I didn't even know what a IED was. So I was starting from like very basic. And so I spent my HDS studying my butt off
yeah.
because I didn't want to not be that, be someone who didn't make it through. So I was a study nerd at HDS for sure.
Sometimes it's actually better because we can take you and mold you the right way.
Right.
Some guys that come in that have had prior knowledge or training, they can be somewhat difficult because they tend to know better.
Yeah, they have. They're set in their
So,
ways. So
yeah.
yeah, I loved HDS. I learned so much. It set a great foundation. I think we were the last class that did the wet film Polaroid stuff too.
My
So
goodness, yeah.
yeah,
Boy, that was a while back. I have a actual one of my teams when I left Phoenix, they gave me a plaque, and it is the old cassette, Polaroid cassette, so and that's
yeah,
probably my favorite plaque. Most people don't know what that is nowadays. And it's funny, at the schoolhouse when I was running the place, I put one of those out in the foyer as you walk in, old equipment, because I didn't wanna hear any gripes and complaints from the students about gear or equipment because, we had wet film, there was no digital. It was all we had these little dark rooms, we had all sorts of just old school things, so
yeah,
interesting challenge for sure, and at the time, we would take 2 X-rays. One would be a straight on X-ray, and then we'd get an orthogonal because you didn't know what you were gonna get. You
yeah,
couldn't change it.
yeah. Absolutely. There's only so many trips you want to start taking downrange too. So
Yeah. So, from there, how was the bomb workout in McAllen?
it was fairly quiet. There wasn't a whole lot going on. And I actually ended up while I was still in McAllen, I ended up deploying to Afghanistan. But of course, I did as much of some of the courses that I could, the post blast investigator school, and all these other different schools that I could to kind of build my to kind of and deployed to Afghanistan in 2010. Did a 4 month deployment there out of Bagram, and had a chance to really learn and to see firsthand the IED fight that was going on during the global war of terrorism, terror, whatever. And it was fascinating to have the opportunity to learn and then provide some represent the SABT and the FBI and a lot of these investigations of things going on.
Yeah, my overseas time, I learned the most because of all the I mean, it was a real fight over there.
Absolutely.
Service members were getting killed, and, although I didn't do render safe, that wasn't our role, but doing the investigation was, in another country, in a war theater, was not easy, and then it's an American citizen you're having to deal with, so
Yeah.
I too learned a lot from that.
Yeah. And one of the things I was able I know a lot of people that are in the public safety bomb tech world have prior military EOD backgrounds, but I'll tell you, having the opportunity to work with those professionals who are going out there and doing render safe stuff, as well as having the opportunity to work in a classroom situation with them, like the advanced IED disablement course in Eglin. Holy cow, there's some amazing military EOD techs. I
Yes.
learned so much from them and really appreciate the amount of work that it took for them to become an EOD tech, and then for the missions that they had to go out and perform were quite extraordinary.
Yeah, I know. I had the same. I was surrounded by amazing people. One of my, commander at the time, he's still, a great friend. Hopefully, I'm gonna have him on the show here soon. Just an amazing individual. I met amazing people that served the country, knew their job really well. I met I was a part of the sexy cell. Was that called the same thing that where you were at?
Yeah, I was at Sexy Bagram.
Okay, sexy Bagram. So for those who, don't send me, terrible comments. It stood for Combined Explosive Exploitation Cell, acronym SEXY. And it was amazing that we got to work with other service members from around the world, whoever was on that team. And that's where I learned a lot from the Brits, Australians, the Marine Corps we were with, the Navy we were with. It was just a great experience. So I echo the same thing.
Absolutely, yeah, amazing work they're doing.
So from after that, where did you go from there? What did you do from there?
Yeah, so after Afghanistan is right about the time because McAllen was considered a hardship office to be in. And so what that means is that I was accelerated a little bit in my ability to move to an office of preference. So I ended up taking a transfer to Richmond. There's a bomb technician slot that opened up. Eric Moorfield left and had gone to the uh, the explosives unit up at the lab.
Yeah, he promoted, right?
Yeah, he got promoted, and so I came in and I had to fill his shoes, which were quite difficult because he's an amazingly smart and
Yes.
gifted individual, and not only as a bomb tech but as a person. And so I had to kind of follow in Eric Moorfield's shoes, which wasn't easy. That was basically essentially we worked it out. I was part of the JTTF, but we didn't have a supervisor at the time. And so some older agents took me under their wing and we essentially made me full time while
Hey,
had an interim supervisor.
yeah.
I was basically like a full time SABT, but I was also doing special events and assistant WMD stuff. So by default, we made me a full time SABT before the new supervisor came in. So that it was just that's just the way it was.
Did that last?
It did.
Wow.
It did. Yeah. Believe it or not, it worked. Sorry for anybody that's listening, but yeah, we pulled it off.
Sometimes, hey, that's what you gotta do. You
Yeah,
gotta, you do things and hopefully it works. And it always that's the thing that I've tried to tell people for years, especially being at the schoolhouse. Your your division's gonna be better off if you have full-time techs there.
absolutely. You
Better
really need
off.
to. You
You
really
do.
need to have some full-time techs at least because it's such a dynamic profession. There's so much to learn. There's a lot of coordination that goes into just doing training itself, and let alone having someone that's available to coordinate response efforts and things like that for the state and locals. I mean, they were the true
Yep.
bomb tech first responders. And so, whether it's an FBI organization or a state and local organization, I think it really helps to have somebody that's doing that as a full time, at least one full time person.
Yeah, I would tell my boss, "Hey, I have, 60 or 70 sources in the state, and they were all my state and locals. I could reach out to any of them and find out what's going on, or they would call me, or we would be out with them." So I always leverage that. And if you're listening to this and you're a new tech or want to be, leverage your experience and the people that you know that are in your field office in the state that you work in, because it'll pay dividends back to the field office and the SAC.
Absolutely.
So from there, you're in Richmond. Any good work out there?
Yeah. So, you know, I guess for it's a good thing there wasn't a ton of activity in our area of responsibility, but the state and local bomb squads that were in the territory that covered FBI Richmond is Virginia State Police, Henrico County, Richmond, and then the Bristol, Virginia, Tennessee squad. And Virginia State Police, there were like 7 sub squads, just beyond that. And so it was a pleasure to get to work with them. That was the best part of my job, is to have an opportunity to work with them because they're all very well trained and had a lot of great operational response experience that I could learn from. And then some of the courses that I was able to go to, I was able to come in and share some of that information and knowledge with them. So I think it was kind of a symbiotic relationship where we're helping each other. But I really enjoyed working with them, doing a lot of overseas deployments when I was in Richmond. Some of it was timely. Some of it wasn't. Like, for example, late 2012, early 2013, I was like, there was 90-day rotations to, Nairobi and, uh, you know, Nigeria, and still, rotations going in and out of theater in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so I'd already done the Afghanistan thing and wanted a different experience. So I volunteered to go to Nigeria. I arrived on a Saturday or maybe an early Sunday. And then the next day was the Boston Marathon bombing. And
Wow.
so I was woke
Yeah.
up in the middle of the night. I think it was, I forget exactly how it all transpired, but every bomb tech on the East Coast was heading up to Boston, and I had left the US to go get some significant bomb tech experience to bring back to Richmond, and then we
Oh,
missed out on probably one of the most significant events that we've had in our nation's history that involved IEDs and a dynamic event like the Boston Marathon bombing was, and the subsequent investigation and capturing the 2 suspects. So I did miss out on that, but I did live vicariously through the experiences of others that had a chance to deploy and work that event.
it was Nigeria, right?
Yeah, I was in Nigeria for
How
90
was
days.
the work out there?
I actually really enjoyed it quite a bit. I was there for a lot of different reasons. One is to work with the Nigerian National Police, and to do some training and work with them, and also to be an on the ground potential resource if there was a bombing in Ankara or Lagos or something like that impacted the U.S. Embassy or other U.S. interests. And so I was they're kind of in a standby capacity. But it was really interesting um, deployment because one of the things that somebody told me is, hey, they don't have a lot of tools. I know that there's some funding that goes out to bomb techs in some of these countries that are not as developed as the United States, but overall, there aren't a lot of tools out there. So somebody said to me, hey, go to your TSA guys at the airport and ask for all of the multi tools, and then send all those over that have been confiscated through security and send them over. And so I went and did that. I went to my TSA friends at the airport, say, hey, you guys have a bunch of multi tools you'd like to get rid of that have been confiscated. They're like, yeah, what do you need them for? I said, I'm taking them to Nigeria. And they're like, cool, have them. And so I got all those and I shipped them ahead of time to the embassy. And as I was going around working with the different police forces, I would hand out some of these multi tools, and they were
Yeah.
extremely appreciative of that.
Yeah.
It gave them something that they didn't have, gave them an extra something to work with. But it was really interesting because I did get to work on some investigations that were being conducted by a lot of different agencies, not only from the U.S. but around the world. And I did have a chance to work and train and spend some time with the Nigerian National Police in various areas around Nigeria. I think one of the most scary incidents that I had was I was working with one of the bomb squads in one of the Nigerian cities, and I had to use the restroom. So I asked where the restroom was, and so it was a dark restroom, and so I went in there and I'm using the restroom, and finally the light, there was no light in there, so my eyes finally adjusted, and I looked down and all I see are IEDs all around me.
What?
Yes, IEDs that had been rendered safe, but you still had blasting caps inside of the explosives in the
Where was
bathroom.
this?
Huh?
Was this at their, like, headquarters or something?
Yes, yes,
Oh my goodness.
yes, and so, I quickly finished what I was doing and carefully exited the bathroom and, never went in there again.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard some whoppers like that too. It just they do things differently.
Yeah, I didn't feel like going to the bathroom again after a second. I was
No.
like, "Look, I'm done
No, it's
here. I'm good.
safer outside.
I think I'm done here. I think I'll hold it for a while." Uh, but yeah, it was quite interesting to see, you know, devices that still had, you know,
Yeah.
the blasting caps and the explosives were still combined.
Yeah, for those lay people who are listening, that's a bad thing. You don't want that, especially an unknown device, because those are probably all, device from terrorists around the country, and that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a great deployment, though. I enjoyed having a chance to view another culture, spend some time in Africa, work with police forces from other countries. It was really a fantastic experience to be
Yeah.
a part of that.
Yeah, I would say probably most of the SABTs who have gone overseas would feel the same way. It was just, you wouldn't get the same experience here. It's just different. And you learn a lot. You're on your own, a lot of it. You're making decisions on your own. And that's a good thing too, that you
Yeah,
learn and grow
yeah, it helps
from.
with the growth. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes it's good to get out of the if you're comfortable all the time, there's not a lot of growth in that sometimes. And so going to a country where you just have to figure things out, it's a tremendous growth experience, both personally and professionally.
Yeah. So from there, what'd you do after?
Yes. So I came back to Richmond, spent some time in Richmond, and then kind of talked. Speaking about growth opportunities, I applied for and ended up on an 18-month temporary duty assignment up at a FBI headquarters. Uh, so basically, what that meant is I became a supervisory special agent for a period of time. Still kept my job. My slot was still available in the field office, and I had the opportunity to either change to be a full time supervisor at headquarters, or I could go back to Richmond. And I ended up working in the FBI's Strategic Information Operations Center, or SIOC. So that was our 24/7 command post. I was part of the night watch, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., which totally screwed up my schedule. But I worked basically Saturday night through, I think it was Thursday or Friday morning, and was doing that for a while. And since the SIOC was underneath the Critical Incident Response Group, which is also the umbrella organization for the counter AD section, the tactical section, the aviation section, and such. There ended up being an opportunity to move into the counter ID section as a supervisory special agent bomb technician to be the FBI's representative on the National Explosive Task Force. And so when that opportunity was presented to me is like, well, I could go be a bomb tech and not have to work night, or I can stay in SIOC and work overnights and not be a bomb tech for 18 months. And so it was pretty clear choice to me. I loved working at SIOC, and the specialists that work in SIOC were amazing to be with. I learned a lot. It was neat to see that perspective, but I decided to go and take advantage of the opportunity to work in the counter ID section, and did that for probably about a year of my 18 months temporary duty. And once that was done, I enjoyed working the National Explosive Task Force and Counter ID section. But during that time period, I actually started working on my master's in unmanned systems at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, like we mentioned before. And that was kind of a strategic decision to find a field that was interesting to me, where I felt I could potentially do something post bureau, something that's emerging technology. And so that's why I made that decision to do that. I decided to go back to Richmond. I still had, 3 or 4 years left until I was eligible to retire. And so I was like, I'm going to wait for a drone related opportunity to come up, and then I'll maybe go back into a supervisory role. And that's kind of what happened. A few months after I got back to Richmond, I was still in my master's program at Embry-Riddle, and I went to a drone conference in Charlottesville, public safety drone conference. And during that drone conference, there was an agent from the FBI that was there talking about their counter UAS deployment to the Super Bowl 53 in Atlanta. And I was sitting there in the audience going, I didn't even know we had a counter UAS team. I had no clue that that was something that we did. It was still kind of in the experimental phase, so to speak. It was part of the operational technology division at the time, just a couple people on the team, didn't even have a budget. Um, After it was over, I went up and talked to him and introduced myself, and started chatting with them. And then I asked, "Hey, are you guys going to expand your team, or what's going on?" And they're like, "Well, it's funny you should ask, because we're looking at expanding the team sometime soon." I'm like, "Oh, this sounds perfect." Like,
Great. Yeah.
I saw the counter drone was a kind of a combination of the unmanned systems masters or drones plus the bomb tech work. And it's like, this is probably going to be the path for me. And so when that job opened up, I immediately applied for it, and did what I need to do. I submitted all my paperwork I needed, and was selected to be interviewed, and got through the interview process, and was ultimately selected to be a part of the team, which was a transformative moment, I think, in my career and personal life, really.
So what did you do with that for the bureau? Did you do deployments? Did you go
Yeah.
places? Did you get your license? How did that all
Yeah.
work?
So I was already a Part 107 drone pilot, but
What's that?
yeah, so basically, I was like a certified commercial remote pilot, so that allowed me to use a drone for commercial purposes if I wanted, and I had to pass a knowledge test that included a variety of things. That included, FAA rules and regulations, flight restrictions, flying in weather, operating drones and things like that. So I was already a certified pilot by the FAA. It's certainly not the most experienced pilot in the world, but I started flying drones and some things like that. But the counter drone side of things, the FBI had just recently been given their authorities to do both drone detection and drone defeat. And the first time that that was deployed was at Super Bowl 53. The team had been around already for a few years, 2 or 3 years at that point. It was sort of a science experiment, and the Bureau had been doing some deployments that were just detection only for quite a while. But we were still in really an uncharted territory, because no agencies really had homeland based urban counter UAS experience. And so we were having to write the book. There was no training plan for us. There was no military school that could teach us how to do urban counter UAS. And so we had to kind of figure it out on our own, have some successes, and also, have some errors that helped us to gain some lessons learned that were applied to future deployments, and ultimately provide a foundation for the expansion of these technologies, the use of these technologies by state and local law enforcement agencies in the future. So it was really interesting to be a part of that initial deployments planning, and organizing deployments. But during my time, I probably did around 50 deployments around the US during those 3 years.
And those were just detection only, or did you
Some were detection only, some were detection and mitigation. So some deployments, like, I don't want to get into operational law enforcement
Yeah.
sensitive stuff, but some of our deployments did have detection and mitigation. But we were covering, the DOJ's mentioned that the FBI has been at Super Bowls, World Series, Rose Bowl, Rose Parade, and DC 4th of July, among others. And so, but we deployed at events well beyond that. all around the U.S. And we had to kind of figure it out as we went. But we had a kind of a really interesting team, the first three of us, and we added some more um, talent from. I pulled one of our electronic technicians from FBI Richmond up onto the team. One of the support employees that we had, he'd been an electronics technician in the bureau for almost 40 years and was really very talented with frequencies and signals. So he had a great foundation that I learned a lot from. And then the other person the one I had met at the drone conference, who was one of the supervisory special agents on the team, he is I learned so much from him on the drone side because he was building and flying his own drones. He was an FPV racer before most people knew what FPV drones were. He was building and flying his own drones and actually flying with people who were some of the best in the world at flying FPV drones and were FPV world champions and things like that.
What's FPB?
First person view drones. Those are the people that are flying the drones with the
Oh my
goggles.
goodness. So you're actually like you're in the cockpit.
Yeah, it's like you're in the
Huh.
cockpit, but he was building and flying his own drones, and he was and still is very talented. I always describe him as the bureau's biggest drone nerd, and I mean that in a very affectionate way. He's so knowledgeable on drones and counter drone, and I was able to learn a lot from him. And then I was also able to bring some operational experience to the table. But I learned a lot during those 3 years, climbing on top of rooftops and stadiums and all around the U.S.
Yeah, so just to backtrack when you with the detection phase, and you don't need to get into specifics, that's not what we do here. But you would essentially go to these venues and you had technology to detect drones in the air, other persons, flying drones in the area.
Right. Yeah.
And if so, you were able to mitigate those?
We had some detection only missions and we had detection and defeat missions. And when you deploy, it's common concept in the counter UAS side of things that you do a multi-layered or a multi-sensor approach. So there's lots of different ways that drones can navigate through the airspace. Some of it's RF controlled, some of it's not. And so that's why you have to have combinations of RF, camera, radar. You can deploy acoustic systems that can detect the sounds of drones. So there's a variety of systems that you would deploy in and
On the
around those
ground with
venues.
Okay, so with you on the ground.
Not necessarily with us. They may be on rooftops or buildings nearby,
Okay.
or in a scissor lift that we brought in to kind of have those things deployed in various fields of view, where they can be successful in some of those environments. And so sometimes we would have some systems deployed with us at our command post, but we would have multiple redundant systems located in and around the venue, and then they were all data backhauled back to our command post where we were monitoring the systems and directing the response of agents and or state and local law enforcement that were designated to go out and find and locate drone pilots and to get them out of the airspace, because that was the a lot of times we were just dealing with the careless and the clueless. So we're just trying to get them out of the airspace is what we ended up doing a lot of the times.
So are these, and I'm just ignorant to it, are these just people wanting to fly their drones anywhere they want and there's a event so they want to go fly around it? Is that
Yeah, so a lot of these, well, every event that we were at, there were flight restrictions associated with it.
okay?
So otherwise, there would be no need for us to be there if there's drones that weren't allowed. Now, you can fly drones in some of those flight restricted areas, but there's a process for that. And we did do operations in which there were authorized drones, but at its core, you're protecting a stadium event venue, VIP, government building, whatever the case may be. That building is being declared a covered asset, and there's a flight restriction put around it, which gives the DOJ or DHS a reason to be there. There's a lot of other coordination that goes on behind the scenes with the FAA and DHS and others, but that's essentially what we would do, and we would protect those events and venues with the technology that we were authorized to deploy by the attorney general.
So I'm assuming this concern with them flying was more worried about people doing nefarious things, right?
We were there for that nefarious actor, but oftentimes you get the careless and clueless that are come into the airspace. They're in flight restricted airspace. They're near that event or venue that we're trying to protect. and we need to get them out of the airspace. One, they're not supposed to be there. They're technically breaking some federal laws, but we needed to declare the airspace so that when we did get that nefarious drone coming in, that we weren't dealing with white noise that was distracting us.
Did you guys get some pretty concerning drones ever come into the area, or were
So
they
yeah, so I was fortunate. None of the events that I worked did we have someone who was actually trying to target the event, but we did. I did deal quite extensively with the careless and clueless drone pilots who were in the airspace. Some of them should have known better, but the others were completely clueless. Or like I remember an event in that we were covering on the West Coast. It was over Father's Day, and a father had gotten a drone. Their house was in the flight restricted airspace that was covering the event that we were covering, and he walked out the door, put his drone up in the air, and his first drone flight, he had a visit from an FBI agent. So
not good?
so it was it was that was a educate, but
Yeah.
that drone didn't show up again. But the rest of the time that we were there, that guy kept it in his house. So that a lot of times that was what we were dealing with. Ultimately, that even the careless and clueless can still be a hazard. They can be a hazard to
Sure.
aircraft.
Yeah.
They could potentially cause a hazard at the event that they're at. I mean, there's videos out there of people that have flown into NFL stadiums and Major League Baseball stadiums and such, and they it can create a safety and security hazard, even if they're not trying to be nefarious.
Well, no one knows what they're doing, so you can just assume the worst.
Yeah, you don't know. Well, that's the thing that makes it hard about this. The counter UAS role is the drone or the drone pilot aren't telling you what they're doing in the airspace. You have to infer from the information that you're able to get from the sensors that you have deployed in the area to determine whether or not that drone is or is not, what its intent is. And sometimes you don't know if they're heading towards that event, venue, stadium, VIP that you're there to protect. Then the assumption is that this guy's a threat because they're already a threat because they're flying in restricted airspace. So that's one knock against them, but then you have to kind of do this in a measured approach because sometimes these drone mitigation technologies can have a negative impact on the people and infrastructure you're trying to protect. So we didn't automatically start trying to mitigate drones because it's kind of like an escalation of force sort of thing. And so that was our approach with this mission. If we could send someone out to find and locate the pilot and ask him or her to land, which a lot of times we knew exactly where the pilot was, and we could do that without having to use the technology. That was the best way to do it. But if they did start to, um, you know, do actions that kind of met our threat profile, then we would take further action if needed.
It seems like this is just since you left, it seems like it more and more is becoming a huge problem in the country and
Yeah,
around the world, frankly.
yeah. The airspace is becoming more complicated. We have more drone users. You have more drones being used for a lot of great commercial purposes. I love the fact that we're seeing more public safety use of drones. I think
Yes.
it's a public safety officer lifesaver,
Yeah, absolutely.
and it can also actually reduce the need for a lot of calls. They can clear calls without even deploying an actual police officer, but it's such a great tool.
And it's
But
cheap
yeah, it's much
compared to, like,
cheaper.
buying a helicopter with
Yeah, absolutely.
pilots and
Absolutely, it's much cheaper, but then also the low level airspace is going to start to get more crowded when you start to see the cargo delivery, the air taxis,
yeah.
all these different things going on. And so this mission is going to become more complicated as time goes on. So it's important that we start to build a good foundation of training, equipment deployment, policies, procedures, tabletop exercises, because it's getting really complicated. There's airspace rules now. So now, you know, a law enforcement officer who already has so many different duties related to their job. Now they have to start to understand airspace rules. I think that's going to be a big part of academies going forward. You have to understand if you have to learn the rules of the road in order to enforce them. Now you might have to learn the rules of the air in order to maybe enforce some state or local ordinances, or maybe you're a deputized, whoever, and now you've got to start to enforce some federal laws or something. So it's gonna get more complicated.
That seems like so much. I mean, they're already doing so much, but I could see the definitely the benefit when I was a state and local, having air show up at your site before you got there was huge.
Yeah.
But now having a really high-end drone show up and circle the area and you can download the video and see it before you get there, like, that's pretty amazing
It's
technology.
a game changer for law
Yeah.
enforcement. I'm so glad to see the use of these technologies, whether it's a a state trooper or law enforcement officer open up the trunk and throwing up a drone on a subject who bolted into the woods, or the drone is first responder stuff where they're got drones and technology pre-deployed, and they're going out and flying these things beyond visual line of sight with the approval of the FAA, and doing some great work. So I'm happy to see that to continue to evolve. But it's just another thing in the airspace we're just going to have to keep aware of, because some of these entities that might have mitigation authorities or capabilities, it can impact authorized traffic in the airspace, and so you have to take that into consideration and as part of your rules of engagement for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know for being a tech and being on SWAT, having a drone was like that was huge. That was a game changer as well to be able to, even if it was a small throw bot. But now, having SWAT teams that have drones that can fly in and do a clear, like
It's huge.
that's
Were you on the Phoenix team when they started deploying the drones?
was
Those early drones were tough ones to fly.
yeah. I didn't fly those, but I had the robot. I was the bomb guy, and
Yeah,
we had the throw bots, and we had little robots that could go in. But once they had the drone technology, that started to trump on us for sure.
yeah,
They could get those in really fast and clear the area before I could even get our robot out and in the doorway. The benefit of having a robot is I can open up doors, I can move
yeah,
things. The drone can't do any of that.
yeah,
So it was a good working relationship, but by far they were the fastest onto a scene inside doing visual clears for the team for sure.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're a great tool for those tactical operations for sure.
So before we get into so you did that for a while, and then at what point did you decide, hey, I think I'm done with the bureau and I'm going to move on?
Well, I'd always kind of hoped to retire around the time when I had my 20 years in. I was over 50. I wanted to have some time. I had at the time I had two daughters in high school, and I know that they had aspirations to go to college, and so I I knew that I still had another career left in me. And so I actually retired the week I was eligible. I mean, I put in my paper 6 weeks before, sorry, 6 months before when I could. But I retired the week that I was eligible, that I could have retired when I hit my 20. And it's not because I didn't like the bureau or didn't like what I was doing. I love the bureau. I'm so appreciative of the opportunities I had in the FBI.
Yes.
I love the team I was working with. We were doing some great stuff. When I retired, I was no longer technically an SABT, but I still was in touch with that community. I loved the camaraderie in the FBI and the mission, and I really believed in it and all that. But it was just kind of I was ready for something different, a new challenge, new chapter. And so, I still remember going up to the critical incident response group headquarters and turning in my badge and creds, and I'd stop by the Quantico Armory and turned in my weapon and all this
Yeah.
other stuff, and I just kind of drove back down to Richmond, and there I was, but I already had some stuff lined up. I was my thought process first coming out of the bureau, since I had some really unique experience in the counter UAS world. I was like, was part of a consulting company, and I ended up building a counter UAS resource website. So that's what I spent the first year of my time after the bureau doing some consulting work, then building a counter UAS website that was putting out daily news and information to help educate and to help provide information for those that are new to the counter UAS space, which is just about everybody at this point.
Are you still working that website at all?
No, I did the website for a year and a half. It was a lot of work to keep
Yeah.
content on a website, and that was my
By
primary.
yourself too, right?
Yeah, I mean, my business partner was doing a lot of stuff on the back end that I didn't have the technical chops to do, so I was appreciative of that. But my role was the content, and it was very difficult to do that. To bring in the content, to write stuff, and if you look at some of my articles that I wrote, they're very bureauish, where I'm just like very fact based. I don't have an English degree, even though it's my first language. I can't write it very well,
Right.
and my report writing in the bureau was very factual based, as you know. And so when it comes to being a creative writer, that's something I don't have in my my I know my articles were kind of dry, but they were informative. I think provided a different perspective. But we ran the website for a year and a half. Thankfully, there was a media group that was putting on a lot of counter UAS conferences that saw some value in that website, and they reached out and said, "Hey, we're interested in you know buying the website and the logos and everything with it." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, let's do
yep,
it.
all good,"
Wow, that's great.
because I was still doing it full time. I was working full time, but still maintaining the website. So I was getting up at 4 in the morning, getting content on. I was working full time. Sometimes I was at conferences all day and doing network events. And while everybody's heading to go have a drink, I was like, "Hey guys, sorry, I got to go
I
maintain
gotta go
my website."
post.
Yeah, and so then I'd be working till 10, 11 at night. I was working almost 7 days a week, and
Wow.
it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I learned so much. But when the opportunity came to, we actually had two people approach us. The first group that approached us gave us an offer that was insulting. It was ridiculous. And not that the website was completely, still very new website, so it wasn't anything crazy. But the second group that came along was a little bit more reasonable. We understood that our website was new, the traffic was still growing, so we knew it wasn't crazy valuable, but they saw value and wanted to grow it, had a similar vision to what we had. And so we did end up selling it to SA Media Group, who operates the website today. So I haven't posted anything on the website in 13 months. So I haven't had anything to do with the website, but it's still being run by SA Media Group, and they're still growing and working on the
Yeah,
website.
that's great, man. Well done. Tell me about this committee that you got involved in. That sounds really boring.
Yeah. It was actually kind of interesting because it's through some contacts that I had made post bureau. There was the FA was putting together a bunch of industry folks from critical infrastructure, airports, law enforcement, the NFL, Major League Baseball, some UAS companies and associations and such. And so I happened to be in the right place at the right time, and had a chance to meet and interact with people who are knowledgeable of this group being formed to start to provide some recommendations that might shape how counter UAS technologies are deployed in the United States. And so after talking with them, and I didn't even know this stuff was going on, but they're like, "Hey, they're getting ready to form a aviation rulemaking committee for counter UAS. Are you interested?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's why I left the bureau, is to be involved in things like that and to have some growth opportunities." So I was asked to be a part of that, which was really cool. It was about 6 or 7 months of a lot of work and meetings, working a full-time job, doing the website, and now you're co-chair of a group that's part of this overall thing. I had about as much as I could handle, but it was really interesting to meet other people in the industry, from airports, amusement parks. We had people from the American Civil Liberties Union on there. We had all kinds of people in there that were providing input, and I learned actually some different perspectives about counter UAS that I'd never thought of before. So it was an interesting growth opportunity for me personally and professionally, and actually a lot of the people that are in that group I'm really good friends with to this day. I see them at conferences, and it's always good to catch up with them and see what's going on with their lives. So it was a great opportunity.
Well, I'm a proponent. Relationships, I've always said, are everything. And that's why you don't burn bridges because you never know when you're going to meet up with somebody from your past and you're working on a joint project together.
Well, you say that, it's funny you say that, and, I have run into that so many times post bureau. I've run into people that were unit chiefs that I would send ECs to open up special events, or that I, worked with in McAllen, down on the border, and all of a sudden, I'm sitting in front of them having business conversations, but just the fact that I made a good impression and had a good relationship with them previously. It helped kind of facilitate, having, great discussions with them. So I feel the same as you. Those relationships you make, whether you're state, local law enforcement, federal law enforcement, whatever, I guarantee you're gonna run into those people again.
Yes.
And so, that is something that's probably a big takeaway that I would recommend anybody getting into law enforcement or any profession really is, you never know who you're going to see again.
Yep. Yeah. And for me, it's always be willing to give a little extra. If someone were to call me, and I did this with my local squads, didn't matter. If they called me, I was either going or I was helping them or I was eventually going to go. It's the same way if anybody calls me now and I'm retired, I'm still kind of working in the community, but anybody calls me for help or advice or needs something, like I'm gonna help them win. Like I want them to succeed. I want them to do well, and it'll go a long way in your career for sure, especially if you're new in law
Yeah.
enforcement.
I think that's a good attitude to have. I've shared a similar thing. I have people reach out to me all the time, either through LinkedIn or wherever. I've actually had people come up to me and say, "Hey, I followed you on LinkedIn. I'd love to chat more about Counter-UAS." And it's like, "Wow, that's pretty cool. Let's chat some more." I've had people. I was on TV a lot last year during the New Jersey sightings, the suspected drone sightings in New Jersey, and I've had people come up like, "Oh, I remember when you were on CNN or
That's what I
MSNBC or
do
wherever." I'm
too.
like, "What? Holy
I
cow!"
know him.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, "Wow, this." I mean, so there are people that are out there watching you, and who are absorbing what you're saying, gratitudes and such like that, and that's something to keep in mind, something that I need to keep in mind because sometimes I can sometimes be a little bit crass or cranky, but yeah, you're gonna run into these people. You never know who you're gonna potentially have influence in some sort of a way that you might run into again in the future. So I think that's good that you're doing that to take time for those people because it really means a lot to them when you do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, so what were those drones? Were they UFOs? I never got an answer on that. Can you share
Well,
that, or do you have to keep you
well,
would you have to kill me
there's some
afterwards?
classified stuff that maybe some classified reporting that I certainly don't have access to, and if I did, I couldn't say anything anyways. But I will say my message on there initially when it started happening, the FBI, the FA, and the DHS were getting blasted in the media for not knowing
Oh, yeah.
what's going on,
Yeah.
and some of the politicians were getting on and blasting them. Why don't they know what's going on? This is awful. When I was actually asked to initially get on CNN by a former FBI agent, Josh Campbell. He said, "Hey, do you mind if I throw your
I know who that is.
information?"
Yeah.
Yeah. "Do you mind if I throw your information to some of the shows to talk about the New Jersey stuff?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And within 30 minutes, I was booked on 3 shows. And then once I was on one CNN show, then I started getting calls from MSNBC, Fox, local news affiliates, overseas publications that wanted to have me talk. But my message was I was going in, I was defending the FA, the FBI, and the DHS. I was like, look, the reason that we don't have this technology widely deployed to detect drones and to maybe deconflict the airspace is because we haven't had any new legislative authorities since 2018. And so I was working to change that narrative. Stop pointing the fingers at the agencies that are responding. And let's take a look at yourself and what sort of thoughtful legislation you're putting out to expand authorities and capabilities to the state and local law enforcement agencies, which is where this technology should be deployed more readily than at the federal level. And then the other part of my message during the New Jersey stuff was like, look, there may be some legitimate drone sightings that happen over military base or critical infrastructure. There's a few things to take a look at. One, drones can fly at night. So the fact that one exists doesn't mean that it's a threat. I'm certainly not discounting that there may have been a nefarious drone involved that related to the initial sightings or whatever. But once one person said that they saw a drone, it's automatically assumed that that is a legitimate, accurate sighting. And then everything in the night sky that blinks or has a white light, which is everything, all of a sudden
Right.
becomes a drone. And so it
Drone.
makes it really hard to deconflict. And some of the operational lessons learned from the FBI is that during operations, we had planets that were misidentified as drones. We had aircraft
Planets?
planets. The planet Uranus was once misidentified as a drone above Hard Rock Stadium.
My
But
gosh,
as much
no.
as you laugh, there have been other deployments in states that I won't name that saw what they believed to be a drone, and after a few days, they realized that they were just seeing a celestial body out in the distance. But if you go outside and you look at night, you'll see a bright white light above the trees. Is it a drone that's a, you know 1,500 meters away, hovering above the trees, or is it some celestial body that's a million or a billion miles away? Sometimes it's hard
Wow.
to tell. And the same
I
thing
guess.
with aircraft in the sky during the daytime. When you look up in the air, you might see a trail for an aircraft that's taken off from Atlanta, is heading up the East Coast towards Europe. And during the daytime, you can see the small speck of that 757, 777, whatever, and you can see the trail behind it. And I go, okay, that's an aircraft that's up really high. But at nighttime, you don't have that ability to differentiate those distances. And so now you're seeing a moving light in the sky, and you don't know if that's a drone that's overhead or maybe 1,000 meters in the distance above the tree line, or is that a aircraft that's 30,000 feet up in the air and maybe 30 miles away. and you just don't have that depth perception to be able to tell. And so that's why some of those things happen. And so my message with that is, let's learn to deconflict what's in the airspace. Let's understand that there are things that can be mistaken for drones, and let's eliminate the unnecessary reporting and really spend our time on the ones that we don't have answers for, because there are some drones out there that are probably doing some things in our that are up to no good, and it could be third party, or sorry, nation state actors, or whoever the case may be. So let's deconflict the stuff that's known, and let's spend our time focusing on the unknown and how we can detect and potentially mitigate those threats.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, we always got a bad rap on something. At the end of the day, it takes a lot of money to have this technology. It takes a lot of money and
Training.
people like yourselves training. Like it's not a you buy it once and you have it. Like this is a constant thing that, most people don't understand how it works and what it takes to just even run a bomb squad,
Yeah.
yet alone having to have the expertise to deal with drones and then what you're talking about, this technology to understand what's up in the sky. And I think a lot of people they just got on the bandwagon and now it's, there's drones everywhere. And of course,
Yeah.
if you don't care and you have a drone, you're going to put your drone up there
And there's
to
a lot of
add
that
to it.
going on too.
Yeah.
I think the most interesting picture that I saw posted was someone posted a picture of what they believed to be a drone that said, "Look, this drone got a vertical stabilizer and there's little windows in it." And when I looked at it, I could clearly tell it was an American Airlines passenger aircraft. And it's just, people like, well, if you look at any major airport, some people were reporting swarms of drones. Well, that ended up being aircraft lining up to come into JFK, or aircraft coming into Newark. And sometimes, like if you're in DC at Reagan, you can sometimes see on a clear night aircraft, 10 or 12 of them in the distance, and they're coming in they're spaced out by the air traffic controllers, and they're coming in. But if, it's, if you've never looked up in the night sky, you're going to see a lot of interesting things, but they may not be drones.
Right. Or satellites even. You see those too.
Low Earth orbit satellites are another piece of that too. If you've never seen the International Space Station come over your house, it is quite profound. My niece is an astronaut, and she was actually up in the International Space Station. So I was tracking the ISS pretty during my time in the bureau, and there was a time when it was going to be visible from Richmond, and so I was all excited, and it was interesting to look at the app to track it. But I knew exactly where it would come over the horizon from the app, and sure enough, it came over the horizon, and it was so bright, and that was 400 kilometers up in the air, about 240 miles up in the air. When it came out into the airspace, I was like, "There's no way that that's the ISS." So I went back to my Flight Radar 24 app to see if that was a potential manned aircraft flying at low altitudes, and it was. There was nothing on there. I went back to the NASA app or whatever I was using, and it was like, "Oh my gosh, that is the International Space Station." It was a bright light that was coming right
Wow.
over our house. But the interesting thing is, where that space station was at that time? It was over Michigan, and I was seeing it from Virginia.
Wow.
So if that
That's
gives you an
amazing.
idea of
Yeah.
how hard it is to do that depth perception, and kind of how things that are high up in the airspace, you can see them from great distances. It was kind of an interesting lesson learned. But yeah, that ISS was over Michigan when I was viewing it.
And you're looking. Wow, that's pretty interesting. So let's talk about what you're doing now. Drone Shield.
Yeah, so I've been with DroneShield for about the last 14 months now. Time's flying by. I'm working on their public safety, critical infrastructure, commercial sector. I also work with some of the federal partners, but DroneShield's been in the counter UAS sector for about 11 years. They're one of the original companies that was out doing this, has been out doing this for quite a while. We started in Warrenton, Virginia. We're now internationally headquartered out of Sydney, Australia, but we have a strong and continuing growing presence here in Virginia. We've got a lot of great technology, and a lot of the foundation of what we've done has been military based, but we have a lot of great, robust technologies that have applications in the public safety, commercial, critical infrastructure sector. And so that's what I've been doing, is to help build the foundation for us to be successful and to provide capabilities to those end users who need this type of technology to do airspace awareness and protection missions.
So you would say, like, if I was a company, I could hire Drone Shield to, I don't know, do surveillance of an event or how
Typically, typically we're selling technology
okay.
for those end users to use.
Okay.
If there was strong need to help deploy or to cover an event, that's something that we could have a conversation about for sure. But typically, we're providing technologies for law enforcement entities, public safety agencies, federal agencies, Department of Defense, critical infrastructure, commercial sector, who are looking to have awareness of what's going on in and around the airspace. And right, obviously, right now with the current authorities, we have a very limited number of agencies that we can sell drone defeat technologies to, but that may evolve here in the near future. So we could see the market expanding quite a bit.
I've been watching the war theaters around the world, and especially being the chief at the bomb school, that was some concerns, especially seeing bombs placed on these things and what the capabilities are now of drones. What is Drone Shield, or what's our country doing to deal with these drones that we're seeing being so effective overseas? Is that a big concern for us?
Absolutely, the use for drone detection and defeat technologies, airspace awareness technologies is a lot of times what I'm referring to them as is a big need for a lot of different reasons. One, not only for the safety and security of the homeland, but these technologies also enable the growth of the drone industry, which the drone industry is going to be the probably the next industrial revolution that we start to see. And so, it plays a big role in both our economy as well as the safety and security of our nation. So there's a lot of counter drone companies out there. Some of them have just been in the market a short period of time. Others, like DroneShield, have been around for a long time. We're in this for the long haul. Everybody's approaching a little bit differently. There's a lot of really good, capable technologies out there, and then there's some that don't work quite as well. But we provide RF detection hardware, both detection and defeat, jamming. We've got jamming capabilities that we manufacture in house, both handheld, on the move, and fixed site drone detection and defeat technologies. But we also integrate third-party sensors and effectors. So we integrate cameras, radars, other drone defeat technologies into our software platform called Drone Sentry C2. And why that's significant is that there's no silver bullet when it comes to counter UAS. There's not any one single system that can detect all drones or defeat all drones. And so it's important that these technologies are deployed in a layered capacity like you would for any other physical security program you're trying to implement. And when it comes to detection, you need RF camera radar at a minimum. You could also look at acoustic technologies or other things like LiDAR potentially, which are kind of starting to emerge. And when it comes to defeat, it's the same thing. There's kinetic and non-kinetic options. There's RF based jamming. There's some cyber takeover technologies. And then obviously there's some, spoofing technologies. And there's also some kinetic technologies, which could range anywhere from a shotgun net to a net capture drone to a missile or another drone ramming that drone. And obviously when it comes to homeland stuff, there are some technologies that may have an impact on the events and venues or critical infrastructure you're trying to protect. You have to be very thoughtful about how you deploy and use these technologies, which is why it's important for there to be some standards and testing and the idea for deploying this technology out to the state and locals is that every state and local, this might sound really familiar, every state and local should go to the same school to learn how to mitigate drones so that when they go back to their jurisdictions, everybody's operating under the same policies, procedures, SOPs with the same safety standards and things like that. It sounds pretty familiar, right? So that concept for that school came from this my bomb technician experience coming in and saying, hey, look, this is HDS but for drones. And thankfully the FBI listened to that, and Dave Cottney started building that concept and working on getting some of that interagency approval, or you know getting them to kind of move forward with that concept. And so that's Dave and took that idea and vision and kind of helped to get interagency buy-in, which has kind of led to some of that. The FBI, I guess, from my understanding, is running their first mitigation school next month in Huntsville with some state and locals. So yeah, so there's a lot of good stuff. I don't know if that's accurate or not because I don't think it's anything that's been published, but I've heard that through the grapevine.
Well, I agree with you that having a standard, and for most of you who don't know, there is only one public safety bomb school, and that is in Huntsville. And having a standard message and a standard way of training is unique in that you can go anywhere in the country and be a bomb tech
Yeah.
because it's the same training. And so I think it was very wise to make sure that that same standard applied to this kind of training because then you could be utilized anywhere, and everybody's speaking the same language. There's not one school that's teaching one thing and TTPs are off or whatever. It doesn't make sense. Or when new technology comes out, everybody is on board with a selected piece of technology that they're going to use as a standard. I think that's very wise.
Yeah, it is because if some of these mitigation technologies are used incorrectly, it could actually cause a safety hazard to the national airspace or potentially impact the communication spectrum, which could have some pretty profound effects depending on the severity of it. So it's really imperative that we are consistently applying the use of these technologies across the U.S.
How far with what we're seeing in the Ukraine and all that is our leaders, are they listening? I guess are they seeing the potential hazards that our community is seeing?
Yeah, so both the previous Biden administration and the current Trump administration have been very forward leaning in wanting to expand these authorities to the state and locals. The current administration went a step further and did some released some a couple EOs, one of which impacted the counter UAS industry, or at least kind of trying to move the ball forward on the counter UAS side of things. But really, the piece that's going to make the most impact is going to be through legislative action, expanding authorities for state and local law enforcement, as well as owners and operators of critical infrastructure. That's where the holdup is right now. Is in Congress, and I want to note there's bipartisan support and there's bipartisan opposition to the expansion of these authorities. And part of what I've been doing since I left is to help try to educate congressional staffs and others to understand what drones do, what the counter technology is capable of doing, what it's not doing, because there's a lot of concerns in the deployment and use of counter drone technologies that aren't warranted or based on fact. They're trying to solve for problems that don't exist. And so I think their misinterpretation of what counter drone technology can do is holding up the ability to expand these technologies to, like I said, the state and local law enforcement, which is where we need it.
How far behind do you think we are? Are we behind?
Well, we're missing out on lessons learned by deploying this technology out. I will tell you that DOJ and DHS, and I'll say this because DHS has said this and DOJ have said this in public forums at conferences. DHS has had over 1,000 deployments, no issues, concerns, no privacy issues, no First or Fourth Amendment issues, no bad effects or any casualties or any infrastructure damage or anything like that. Same thing with the DOJ. So there's already a tremendous amount of lessons learned. There's a process and procedure in place and left and right limits on how this technology is deployed. Let's take the lessons learned that we have and start scaling it to select law enforcement agencies, and let's learn some lessons about what's the approval process like, and what's working, what isn't working. There should be some oversight and reporting as to how these technologies are being used. So let's figure that out and let's do it in a thoughtful way. But let's start learning some lessons about how we can thoughtfully scale these technologies, especially the drone defeat technologies, to state and local law enforcement, and then kind of go from there. But right now, we're too afraid to act. And like I said, it's been 7 years since we've had any meaningful counter US legislation. And right now, they're playing with the safety and security of our homeland. And we really need to, our elected officials really need to step it up.
Yeah. Yeah, it was always a question of money. I mean, I get it, like, things are expensive, and it takes a lot to run HDS. It's gonna take a lot of money to run a drone training, like,
Yeah.
it's just but you get what you pay for.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So how was, just to back up a little bit, how was transitioning out of the bureau? Was it more difficult than you thought it would be, or did this opportunity that you're doing now kinda just put all that together for you and gave you a little bit more, uh I guess, better thoughts on leaving? Did it seem like it was valuable at the time to leave and
Yeah.
you've done well?
I was lucky in that I had some experiences in the bureau that helped set me up for, having some opportunities post bureau, and leaving the FBI. I had already had the opportunity to kind of co-found, but just at a later date until I got out of the bureau, a consulting company, and then to be able to start working on the website. So I retired in October 2022, and we had the website released within 2 months, built it and had content on it. So that's what I spent most of my time on. So I was lucky that I had something waiting for me. But I think the hardest part, I was just ready for a new chapter for one thing. But I think the hardest part of the transition really was learning how to fly domestically without being armed.
Right? It's terrible.
Yeah, so I had to watch YouTube videos. I didn't know how to go through security. I didn't know what the current procedures were, and I didn't want
I
to.
hate it. It's not the same. I agree. I
Yeah,
didn't
so,
see that coming. You're right. That is
yeah,
terrible.
I didn't want to inadvertently take off my pants when I wasn't supposed to. I didn't know.
That's my biggest fear is that I have a knife or bullets in my back. Like I double check because that's 20 something years of carry flying armed
Yeah,
and all your weapons. I've traveled with all my weapons before. So yeah, that would be my big fear, but it does kind of,
yeah. That was a little bit of a transition for me. I didn't know how to fly domestically, so I had to watch some YouTube videos, figured it out. Best thing I did was get TSA pre-check though, so at least kind of keep
pre-check.
me. I know some people do the clear thing, which they get high priority in those long lines, but TSA pre-check has been great because I never spend more than 10, 15 minutes in a line getting through securities.
Yeah, no, I agree. I have that still and it is good. So what are your future plans? What are you looking at next 5, 10 years for you?
Yeah, so that's a good question. That's something I'm still always constantly evaluating. I have two daughters in college right now. Hopefully in 5 years they'll both be done with their undergraduate. I know one's going to be done in about 2 years here, and the other one's going to be just started. It's a lot of it's going to depend on where they are in their life, and I would like to slow down sometime in the next 5 plus years, but I don't know that I can um, totally shut down. Maybe it's going to take some time because all I've done is I've done in the bureau we worked a lot of long hours. In the corporate world, I'm working a lot of long hours because I'm trying to add value to the company and to kind of justify having a seat at the table. So I spent a lot of time working. So there's going to have to be some detox time where I'm going to have to
Yes.
slowly kind of wean myself away from doing a lot of work and maybe finding some other ways to spend my time with family, friends, new hobbies, things like that.
Yeah. Maybe get a couple cows and chickens.
That's my goal. I want to have some bees, maybe some goats and chickens,
Bees.
and we'll
Yeah.
see from there. And dogs, I'll probably have a bunch of mini Aussie farm out there or something.
Awesome. So I always ask my guests this one question, but what is because there could be a lot of young listeners, and I hope there are wanting to get into law enforcement or the military and want to serve. And you've had an amazing career and you've done a lot of great things. What would be your one piece of life advice that you could offer to a young person to say this that's helped you win at life?
Yeah, so I think one thing that I keep in mind that I learned as a young medical service corps officer, one of our, like a senior captain at the time, got up in front and was giving all these young lieutenants who were in the officer basic course some advice, and what he said is always stuck. I mean, I don't remember everything people tell me, but I did remember this, where he said, "You are your own best career manager. No one is going to open the door for you for your next job, although that does happen. But typically, you're going to have to go out and work hard, find the challenging jobs. Don't be afraid to jump into something that you don't know how to do. And then, always you're going to have to go out and find some of those opportunities. And when I look back at what I did, I think that's kind of what I did. I was assigned to Miami FBI, and I was like, you know what, I want to be in part of the evidence response team. So I was mopping floors and sweeping and organizing inventory to kind of earn a slot to get on the team, that I was a hard worker. And so, I would kind of take that career advice is you're your own best career manager, work hard, put yourself in a position to take advantage of opportunities when they present themselves. An example where that happened with me was when I talked about starting my master's program in unmanned systems. That was a lot of work that I had to do in addition to being a full-time, FBI employee. But when the time came, I used that background and my SABT background. It kind of gave me a door to get into the counter drone stuff. And then the counter drone stuff has opened doors for me in the civilian side of things too. So it all kind of adds up over time. It kind of goes back to what we said earlier: is to establish good working relationships with people. Try not to burn bridges because you're going to see those people again. But you're your own best career manager. Go out and get what you want. You're going to have to go do it yourself because no one's going to hand it to you.
That's a great piece of advice. Tom Adams, Thank you so much, brother. It's great seeing you. I'm glad you're doing well and you're doing something that you enjoy, but you're also good at.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you, Jay. I had a great time today chatting and also learning more about you and some of your thought processes too. So that was really great. Thank you.
You bet, brother. We'll see you on the next one.
All right, talk to you later.
All right. Bye.